and then we will give them to the band, and then for these students. And last but not least, most, if not all of you know that the restrooms are just straight ahead across the hall. We will be taking about a 5-minute break around 4 o'clock or so. We'll leave it up to the band members to get the stats up. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to start right off. After I introduce our bandmates here with earliest documented tunes that was appropriated by a white man from the African American tradition. This was in about 1822, when an English actor, Charles Matthews, came to this country, and he was a noted comedian and impersonator in England, and he sought out African Americans and attempted to impersonate them and some of their music. And this is one of the tunes, the earliest one that is recorded in history, but it's not the only tune that was appropriated from African Americans that we know of in our tradition, in our folk tradition. And I'll say much more about that in our presentation. But I figured we'll start with some music, and then I'll talk some more as we come to various tunes. First, let's introduce our bandmates that have been working hard to learn a bunch of tunes that we really haven't played much before. On bass is Mary McCartney.
Hey.
Fiddle, Lee Tellman. Guitar and vocals, Steve Severs. Okay, and I'm Howard Steiner. So we'll be attempting to enjoy ourselves up here. We're a little nervous because, you know, these are kind of new tunes for us. But here we go. We'll start with B section. Did everybody are getting back? All right, I won't repeat Possum Up the Country. So those of you, I'm glad to see a bunch of people here that I've seen before these presentations. It's really nice to see you all. And you know, from these other presentations, it's been going on now for 5 years. We've been coming and doing these with the Rinktum Ramblers String Band. And you've heard my fascination with the origin of these folk melodies, folk tunes and songs that come to us from, a lot of times the traditional fiddlers in Appalachia. And in fact, I've been surprised by how many of these tunes that we learned from the source fiddlers in Appalachia came to us through the transmission of the tunes from the minstrel era. And while the rest of the country moved on to other tunes and forgot about the pop tunes of the 18th century, these tunes kept on being played and became part of the folk tradition. So it's been an interesting surprise to find out about this origin of these tunes and something of say there's a flip side to looking at this era of minstrelsy, so-called blackface minstrel stage performers. On the one hand, we've got this linkage through probably this very widespread popular art form that really was throughout the country, starting in about the 1830s all the way up through the 1890s. This was a popular form of musical comedy entertainment, maybe the most popular, and it was for both working class and upper strata of the society. There were theaters in Broadway, and large cities, in rural towns. Traveling troops went around and spread the tunes widely, and so many of them entered into folk tradition. And we know them as American folk tunes. Old Susanna, all those Stephen Foster tunes, way down up on the Swanee River. All these things came through that transmission of minstrelsy, minstrel stage. So I'm looking at the time because I want to keep my remarks a little short. So we've got time to get to all the music that we'd like to play for you. And we've got about 19 tunes. We're going to aim for getting through most of them. We'll see how it goes. Let's start with one that was Abraham Lincoln's favorite tune. So they say. It was introduced in the minstrel stage on Broadway. Became an instant pop hit, spread throughout the country, and here's how it goes.
I got a feeling that half of our audience is going to make a beeline to the chiropractor after we're done here. I don't know if the folks over here, if they'd like to, if anybody would like to move, because it's not going to bother us.
We are not amplified except for my voice, so it's going to be hard to hear some of the music unless you're going to get up close.
Yeah, please feel free to arrange yourself so you can see and hear the best way you can.
There's a couple seats over here by Karen, she doesn't bite much. And there's one over here.
Seriously.
Wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray, in Dixieland, to make my stand, living down in Dixie, away, away, away.
Mike? Mike?
No, that's Howard.
Yeah. So there's a lot to say about this song. A song that had such a history of the Civil War period, and then became an anthem of the lost cause. All the kinds of implications and ripple effects. And it's emblematic of a minstrel tune, in that the lyrics that you heard in part Steve sing talk about this kind of idealized romantic yearning for the good old days back on the plantation. And this was a minstrel tune that was sung in the blackface characterization of a slave. So the South took that one part of the chorus, that repeating chorus about I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie, and it became this kind of nationalistic call to duty part of the Confederacy. But also emblematic in this tune is the way that there's this kind of trope that shows up again and again in minstrel tunes, just the way it did in Stephen Foster's tunes about missing the old folks at home and those good days on the plantation. There's a tune by Stephen Foster that describes how we're so sad that masses in the cold, cold ground can't see for doing my work because of the tears that I'm shedding. So that was one of the stereotypes, and we'll talk about some others that show up again and again in minstrel performances. That as we look at these tunes, prefer not to whitewash their history. This is really a part of a cultural ethos of the time that over again cemented in and reinforced a perception of African Americans as inferior, hardly human in some ways, or stereotyping them as just kind of a rural, rustic, grinning people who didn't really know much. So, we're going to do another tune here that comes from this other Civil War time. And you recognize it as the Julia Ward Howe, the tune that she came up with that was based on the one we're going to play. So the tune that is the traditional fiddle tune is one that's called John Brown Clyde.
ourselves a traitor crew, this soul goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The soul goes marching on. The conflict gladiator good from heaven out to view. The army of the Union with the flag of white and blue. And heaven shall ring with anthem for the deed they meant to do. His soul keeps marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul keeps marching on.
So, Battle of the Republic, based on, thank you. Battle Hymn of the Republic was based on this marching tune that was adopted by the Massachusetts Regiment in about 1861. The Massachusetts Regiment, 2nd Division, was based in Boston. And about 1840, there was a publication of a Methodist hymnal that became very popular, where the soldiers learned about this melody, which was based on a hymn, a Virginia Methodist hymn that had been published in 1807 by a preacher that was serving the rural communities in Virginia and preaching to interracial groups that gathered in these camp meeting revivals. You know about the camp meetings? The Great Awakening. There was a lot of kind of fervent worshiping. A lot of it was singing, and a lot of it was improvisational singing. And there are eyewitness accounts that this hymn was sung in the form of a ring chant. Ring chant being an African observance, religious observance, in which there was singing in a circle group with some percussion, like canes or sticks, while people moved in a counterclockwise direction. And in the original publication, there was a call and response in this, not in the 1840 publication, but the original has this African survival of this religious practice of call and response. So here's another example of what's become a folk melody, really based in an African tradition, African American heritage passed along to us. All right. Next, we're going to do a tune that also part of the Civil War legacy. Let's start playing it, and then we'll talk some more about it. It's called Camp Chase. I'm getting help from all over the place here. All right, yeah, interesting origin story of this one. The story goes that Saul Copland, who is the grandfather of one of the source fiddlers that we revere from West Virginia, was captured. He was captured twice and sent off to this prison camp outside of Columbus, Ohio. It's called Camp Chase. And on Christmas Day, the commandant of the prison camp held a fiddle contest. There were thousands of people at this camp, so there were a number of fiddlers. And they were all to play the same tune, and then one that the judge played the best would get his freedom. And that's the origin of this tune. Saul Cowper played it, and was judged the best, and went back to being what they call a bushwhacker, taking pot shots at the Union soldiers in West Virginia from the mountain laurel thickets. But he also came back with this story in a really good tune. Turns out this tune, the folklorist of the Smithsonian says that this tune is based on a Virginia tune called George Booker, which was in turn based on a Scottish strathspey that was documented in the late 1700s. The Marquis of Huntley's Farewell was a strathspey. Now, strathspey has a whole pile of 16th notes that run all fast together and then slows down to maybe an eighth or a quarter note, and then it speeds up again with these little 32nd or 16th notes. I mean, it's a really kind of jerky, kind of fancy tune, very dramatic. George Booker is more like a banjo tune. It's just got this kind of bumpy rhythm to it. So, this, I think, is the African-American connection with this tune, that this common melody, George Booker, might have been influenced by the African-American tradition. All right, finally, we're going to do our last Civil War tune. This one was composed by Henry Clay Rourke, who was son of a very, very active abolitionist minister in, I think, Vermont. And he spent a lot of time with freedmen and soaking up musical ideas and the way that people spoke. And he put this into a number of his tunes. He wrote 27 tunes between 1861 and 1865 supporting the Union cause. And this one was his big hit. This is the year of Jubilo, or Kingdom Come. And you'll hear in the story that Steve is going to sing that there is a emancipation coming.
Dark when he's there and seen the master with a mustache on his face. Along the road of time, this morning he's gonna leave this place. See him both a mile, with the Lincoln gunboat bay. He took his hat and left for his unexpected go away. The master ran on, the darky sees so low. It must be now the kingdom coming here, if you don't know. The more the things the master, further he can want gone. There's wine and cider in the kitchen, dark they'll have some. I suppose they'll all be congregated and leaving so much come. The master in the hall, the dark days of old. It must be now the kingdom coming in the year of kingdom come. The overseer, he makes us trouble and drives us round the spell. We'll lock him up in the smokehouse cellar till the keys come down the well. The whip is lost, hands are crooked, the master will have his pay. He's old enough, big enough, farm to know better, they're going right away. The master comes home, the darkness says so low. Must be down to keep us coming in the year of Jubilee.
Now we're going to move into focus on the minstrel tunes, the minstrel stage productions. And the one that really launched this craze, there was this musical theater craze that took over from about the late 1830s on through the 1890s. This blackface minstrelsy. And this one, the minstrel performer Thomas, quote, Daddy Rice, was the stage name, performed this in 1828. And he said this was based on really imitating the dance and song that he heard. The story changed from time to time. Sometimes it was a dock worker, sometimes it was a crippled slave who was working in a stable as a groom. In any event, it was a giant hit. There were bands that were shortly, regiments. There were fifers playing this for their regiments. There were people singing it in the streets. You can hear the tune. I don't think much of the tune, but we'll do our best to play what was back then a big sensation. And it was called Jump Jim Crow, which you'll recognize that term. And it eventually gave its name to the Jim Crow laws. Let's do a little tuning here.
They didn't have tuners in 1828.
Thankfully not doing this in blackface.
Yeah.
And, on one hand, when we examine the minstrel era, there's this tragic element to it. And then on the other hand, we have come a ways. When we think about Okay. Yeah, this one is called Claire in the Kitchen, and it was, I think, yeah, Thomas Bryce and George Nichols, George Washington Dixon, they all claimed to have originated this. They were early minstrels, but there's a little bit of doubt about that. There was a historical account of minstrelsy written in the 1800s that talks about this tune being known to river boatmen, like enslaved river boatmen. There's a musicologist in Chicago, Paul Taylor. I don't know if anybody here knows Paul. But he's come across an account of frontier life in Indiana on the Ohio River, down south of Port of Indiana. And includes this description of dances held after corn huskings. The pieces mostly called for were The Gray Cat Kittened in Charlie's Wig, Captain Johnson, and the whole thing ending in a jig called Clarification. So, dating from 1810, that journal. And this is kind of consistent with what we see with minstrels claiming authorship, having put their names on the kind of published music that was also a part of the minstrelsy industry. The pop tunes were, of course, circulated by this music publishing industry as well as on the minstrel stage. So, here we go with Clarification.
Picked the boy with a brand new broom, and after that we formed a ring. This is the song that we do sing. Claire the kitchen, oh, 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 Claire the kitchen, oh, 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 Virginia never tires. I went to the creek, I couldn't get across, nobody with me but an old blind horse. But old Jim Crow came riding by, he said, "Fella, your horse will die." So Claire the kitchen, oh, 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 Claire the kitchen, oh, 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 Virginia never tires. Neighbor said, "On every land," he winked at me and I winked at him. I picked up his own and his, and she says, "Hey, you better not do that again." There's the kitchen, oh, 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 there's the kitchen, oh, 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 Virginia never tires.
Mike?
All right, we're gonna play next. We're gonna play to the Juno. You know it as Turkey in the Straw. And recorders. This tune showed up as another tune that earlier minstrels had claimed as theirs, and they had entitled it Old Zip Coon. And Old Zip Coon was really clearly a racist characterization of a city freedman who was depicted as having these very over-fancified dress, though he styled himself as a learned, intelligent person, he was always using these malapropes and mangling language. So this is another kind of ridicule of a stereotype, and I mentioned there were a number of different characters that showed up again and again in minstrel performances. And one of them was this, the city slicker that was thinking himself clever, but depicted as deluded. And I'll talk a little bit more about some others as we go on the stereotype. But Old Zip Coon was definitely this trope that showed up again and again. Turns out, though, that this tune was actually published as Old Zip Coon in another one, another title, Matches Under the Hill, in the earlier 1930s. Matches Under the Hill is, I think, a clue as to this tune's origin. You might have heard in a previous presentation a little bit about this, because we have we've talked some about how this was a riverfront town. There's Natchez, where the regular people lived up on the bluff, and down below was the riverfront, where all these rough and tumble things happened, including dances and fiddling and drinking and different races mingling and getting together and coming up with, as young people will, good dances and tunes. And this one might have come from that kind of intercultural exchange between African Americans and the white working class that frequented Natchez Under the Hill. So here we go.
Going down the road, tired, feeling heavy load, crack my whip and leave it front. Thursday day to the wagon tongue, turkey and straw, turkey and hay, turkey and straw, turkey and hay. Roll up, twist up behind at the home, bring it up the two gone, turkey and straw. Went out to milk and I didn't know how. Milk the goat instead of that cow. Donkey sitting on a pile of straw, winking at his mother-in-law. Turkey and straw, turkey and hay, turkey and straw, turkey and hay. So much for the back of the hall. Bring up the food on turkey with a straw. Came to the river, couldn't get across. Paid $5 for an old blind boss. ahead, or what a stand still. Ran up and down like an old sawmill. Turkey in the straw, turkey in the hay, turkey in the straw, turkey in the hay. Come along, push him up behind like a hawk. Turkey with the boom gone, turkey in the straw.
This is an early one, too, from the 1830s, 1834. It was published in the Virginia Reels collection by George Knauf from 1839, and in the repertoire of Thomas Day Rice, and also sung by P.T. Barnum in blackface. So it had some, this was later in the shorter. So it had a long longevity. The kind of circumstantial clues to it, the influence of the African American tradition is in its drive, in its rhythmic drive. And you'll notice that this tune, like many others that originated in the African tradition, doesn't have a lot of change in its pitch variation. Its interest is because of its rhythmic drive, not so much because of melody. And there's this kind of synergy that happened in the folk tradition in that with some of the tunes that we'll play later on, the ones that we played for you previously, there was this melding of rhythmic interest and melodic interest. But this one's got mostly the driving rhythm and stuff going on.
Hey, here we go.
Record party promenade, swing it around, don't be afraid. Great big circle, does it go, and go goes well. Down the road, down the fair, everything like you get up there. Down the river, you got no care, everything like you get up there. Looking at the great big thing I know, must be a reason I don't know. Where you go, you walk, you play, you can't think about it how long ago. Up with this person, getting up there, everything like you getting up there. Everything like you getting up there, everything like you getting up there. Going around, passing flower, making whole cakes and ring out. Put on skillet, put on pan, I'm gonna make a little joke around. Everything like you getting up there, and nobody got no care. Everything like you getting up there.
Ooh,
Old me there, Howard.
I didn't tell you, it's such getting upstairs. Yeah, or I've never seen the like of such a getting upstairs. That's the full time. this next one also has some clues in it to its African origin, African tradition, African American linkage to this folk tune that we play called the Old Jawbone. And this was Joel Sweeney claimed authorship of this, and it was published in about 1840. Turns out Jawbone was a stock character in minstrel performances. Usually, and anybody know Jawbone's also a musical instrument? Yeah, the half of a jaw of a horse or a mule or a donkey was skin dried out. The teeth became somewhat loose, and a stick or some kind of metal rod was scraped over the molders, just like a rhythmic instrument. And the other rhythm instrument that was utilized by enslaved people in the plantation was the bones, rib bones, that were used kind of like castanets. And Mary, this is your cue. Mary had about a day to practice making a sound of these wooden bones. So So you can see they're in the shape of rib bones, and the minstrel performers adopted this. Thank you so much. So in addition to appropriating tunes, they appropriated the musical means of making music. One day I'm going to get better at playing these. It just seems like it could be a lot of fun. Yeah. So, as a character, Jawbone, or Mr. Bone, was typically in the minstrel lineup, was one of the end men. And one of the characters would have been kind of like the city slicker in the middle, and he was the interlocutor. He was the one who was asking questions of the end men, and the end men were kind of played as being simple-minded or being innocent of how the real world worked, and that was the joke. That was the comedy that was ridiculing their lack of worldliness. But we do have this good tune out of the minstrel transmission of the tune, and we think that there's some pretty good clues in this one as well. The musicologists would point to how in this tune, and the one that we might get to maybe just before our intermission or maybe just after, both of them are in the key of A, but instead of being an A scale, I'll show you what the scale is. There is a flatted seventh. The seventh part of that scale is 1/2 step down. And that didn't come from Europe. That is the blue note that is our heritage from Africa. So in this tune, you're going to hear Old Jawbone use that flatted seventh. And maybe in the next tune too, which is called something about Jenny. We'll get to that on the back page here.
dies, I'll take his gift. If he lives, I'll ride him again. Walk the bone and walk away. Walk the bone both night and day. Job on walking, job on talk, job on leave with a knife and fork. Job on broken wire glue, at my head and hide my feet. Walk the bone and walk away. Walk the bone both night and day. My wife back in Tennessee sent that jawbone back to me. Hung my jawbone on the fence, haven't seen my jawbone since. Walk the bone and walk away, walk the bone all night and day.
All right, this one on?
Yep, thanks, Alan. It is, it's intermission time. Let's take, let's be generous and say 10 minutes. If you've got some thoughts, questions, you can write them on those cards, send them up here on the table, and we'll see if we get some time at the end and look at the questions and respond as best we can. So, see you back here. You'll know when we're going to start because you'll hear the music.
Oh, terrific. Oh, yeah, that's great. All right. Usually I pick her when I do slow. Yeah, I remember. We started something like that. That's like fast when it's in front of the audience. Excited. Nervous.
special. Yeah. Oh, you know what, Shane? I was gonna send you an email. I'll take the list and then supply. Oh, yeah, it is. Oh, isn't here? Yeah, well, sure. Giving you that, are you coming?
They have time to Google.
Hey, that's right. Hey, come late. There'll be music, there'll be music. During the house.
So, but the
About 9. And then afterwards, there'll be a jam session. Sure. No, we got stuff. Oh, no. The greens. Kizu.
Find more.
Hey, Helen. Yeah. Well, it's both fun and all over. For us.
What am I giving you?
Really?
Oh, I don't know. I know the answer. I'm sorry.
That was
the bait. Was on the water, wasn't it?
no, Art Palace.
What was the place on the,
Oak. The Oak was at Western.
No, she danced.
Anyway, so, Rick.
You'll hear my voice and then you'll know that they're gonna play. He said I'm supposed to remind people that the country dances at the Ashimo Grange are too much fun to miss. They're always to live music, there are always live musicians there, and some people come just to hear the music.
Ashtama?
Ashimo Grange, which is north of West Michigan.
Oh.
It's, if you look on your phone, your map will get you there. We always dance on the second and the fourth Saturdays of the month, unless there's a holiday or something that gets in our way. We don't dance in July and August because vacations go down. But if you like this kind of live music, you can come and listen to the music, and I guarantee you want to get up and dance. I'm calling on May 10th. If you come at 7, it's always a beginner's lesson, and the beginner's lesson can teach you everything you need to know. If you can walk at a rhythmic pace, you can contra dance, and you can contra dance within 20-25 minutes of instruction. We always start with the easiest dances. All the music is live. All the dances are taught. All the dances are called. The connection between contra and square dancing and this old-time music is a very strong connection. And so it all ties together.
Come and dance with us. Come sing Sacred Heart with me. When's that? Every third Sunday at my house. Ooh.
All right,
Curious about that. Cross fertilization.
we'll just start right off with Jimmy, get your whole cake done, and then I'll tell you about whole cakes. And about the syncopation that occurs in this tune, that is really, probably, an inheritance from the banjo.
Going down the road upon the stump, there's a toe, take a wick, there's a call about it, pick the boat, walk out in the water, and they get your whole cake down, my dear, and they get your whole cake down, Lord, and they get your whole cake down, my dear. I am running strand, hanging down my langhorn hat, gonna do the country dance, won't be back till half past nine, and they get your whole cake down, my dear, and they get your whole cake down, Lord. This has gone away, left them for the break of day, and you hear the white folks say, and you let the banjo play. You let your whole cake on, my dear, you get your whole cake on, Lord. Master and Mrs. promised me when they died in 73, now the boys are dead and gone, let me have their whole and more. You get your whole cake on, my dear, you get your whole cake on. I'll have to let you know there is no use in the old banjo. If you wanna hear it ring, watch his finger on the string. Then you get your whole cake on, my dear. Then you get your whole cake on.
Wow.
All right, Jim.
So Jenny is from about 1840. That was claimed anyway by Joel Sweeney to be from 1840, and got a music publisher to put it up after his performance. Now, you heard that blue note again in there, and in addition, there was a little syncopation that shows up. Turns out that minstrel tunes became Civil War period tunes as well, because the rhythm appealed to people. And so this is an account from Private John Dinkins, Company C of the 18th Mississippi Volunteer Infantry. He described his march toward Sharpsburg in September of 1862. The men moved along at a lively gait. As night came on, we sang all kinds of plantation songs, Rock the Cradle, Sally, get your whole cake done, I'm going down the Newburgh Road, and so on. And one of the things about minstrel tunes that made them memorable were these kinds of interesting rhythms. Again, a legacy of the African American tradition. There is a kind of cruel irony in that the very music that made the minstrel shows as entertaining as they were, and the very instruments that were used were all part of this African American tradition that then was turned in this racist and demeaning way towards the very people who had supplied this tradition, this kind of music. All right, here's the one that, again, Dan Emmett claimed this one in 1843. You know it as Old Man Tucker, which everybody gets to sing this in elementary school. It's just this pleasant little nonsense song, right? About some guy combing his hair with a wagon wheel and guy with a toothache in his heel. But it turns out Dan Tucker was one of these stock characters in minstrel shows as well. Kind of a simple rural guy. So again, the stereotyping is gone from our present day renditions of this tune, but it has this unfortunate history.
Old and Tucker went to town, riding the goat and leading the hound. Hound gave me help and the goat gave me comfort, and Tucker went to town all the time. Get out the way, old man Tucker, you too late to get your supper. Go away, old man Tucker, you too late to get your supper. Old and Tucker was a fine old man, washed his face in the frying pan, combed his hair with a wagon wheel, tied with a toothache in his heel. Get out the way, old man Tucker, you too late to get your supper. Get out the way, old man Tucker, you too late to get your supper. Old and Tucker, he comes to town, riding a billy goat, leading the hound. Hound dog barking, billy goat jump, landed old Tucker and all the time. Get out the way, old man Tucker, I'm too late to get your supper. Up the done and get this looking, old man Tucker's looking and looking.
Musicologists would again point to clues in that tune about its likely African American tradition influence. The verse, again, has that kind of, it's not melodic variation, it's interesting, it's that rhythmic thing that's going on. That's, that's got the drive to it. So, I guess the other thing that I just say about old Dan Tucker is, he's this guy that's just ridiculed because he's too late to get his supper. And then he gets thrown off the goat and lands astride a stump. So there's this kind of, almost a sadistic comedy appeal, I guess. Next one we're going to do is a tune that you might be familiar with, Get Along Home Cindy. It's just been a popular tune for a long time. But it has an ancestor, The Girl from the South, which was published in about 1848, 1850, written by L. W.H. Crosby and performed by Christie's Minstrels. You might know, I've heard of that famous troupe that did a lot of productions in New York City. The song has been attributed to Dan Bryan, and I'm thinking that, we keep giving credit for the lyrics, but I don't think for the tune. So we're going to play, and Steve is going to sing the lyrics that we know from Get Along Home, Cindy.
You're out to see my Cindy, she lives way down south. She's so sweet, the honeybees swarm around her mouth. Get along home, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, Cindy, I'll marry you someday. Wish I had a nickel, wish I had a dime. Give it to my Cindy, who loves me all the time. Get along home, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, Cindy, I'll marry you someday. I wish there was an apple hanging on a tree. Every time baby that we take a little bite of me. Get along home, get along home, get along home. Cindy, I'll marry you someday.
So there's more to say about this tune. The lyrics went something like this: to gal from the south. Well, Massa owned a colored girl who bought her from the south. Her hair curled so very tight she couldn't shut her mouth. Which evolved into, you ought to see my Cindy, she lives way down south, she's so sweet, honeybees all swarm around her mouth. And that was a real popular song, and minstrels were known to borrow, appropriate tunes from others, and they borrowed from each other as well. So there was another tune that came and performed on the minstrel stage called Massa Had a Yeller Gal. Well, Massa had a yellow gal, he bought her from the south. Her hair was black, so close and tight she couldn't shut her mouth. He sent her to the blacksmith's shop to have her mouth made small. She fell in love with the blacksmith and swallowed the shop and all. Which there's humor in that. The characterization, though, of some of the stereotypes were of women who were depicted as repulsively ugly or of having enlarged features, like a giant mouth. So they were painted on with giant lips over the black face. Big noses, large feet, these exaggerated, what we would think of as ugly features, were a part of a stock character, which was kind of known as the ugly wench. And this was another way of, in a sense, well, it's definitely demeaning, but, dehumanizing. This is kind of outside the realm of just normal humanity. So, while the lyrics can be funny, the context was kind of devastating. The next one we'll do, though, is interesting in that this is a tune by Stephen Foster, who did write a bunch of songs that kind of did this fantasy depiction of how great it was on the plantation. And there is a bit of that in this tune, but it really humanizes the narrator. And you'll hear some of the words that people sing that, again, is a way that Stephen Foster, at one point, did not want to be only composing minstrel tunes that would be demeaning. This one's Angelina Baker from 1850.
Angelina Baker lives in a village green. Way I always loved her, she's all you've ever seen. Father was a baker, they called him Uncle Sam. Never can forget her, no, that is where I am. Angelina Baker, age of 43, gave her candy by the pack, but she won't marry me. Angelina Baker, let me here alone. Let me here weep a tear and play on the old trombone. Angelina Baker, age of 43, came by the pair, he won't marry me. Angelina Baker, let me hear alone. Let me hear weep a tear and play on the old trombone. Boys lying abandoned grass, neither black nor brown. It was the color of the growing cloud before the rain poured down. 16 horses in my king leader, he was blind. I came close to dying, and they told my hands were lying. Angelina Baker, age of 43, gave her candy by the pair, she won't marry me. Angelina Baker, let me hear alone. Let me hear the weeping tear and play on the old trombone.
Hear that last bit early in the morning. on a lovely summer day, I asked for Angeline, and they say she's gone away. I don't know where to find her, because I don't know where she's gone. She left me here to weep here, and beat on the old jawbone. No, she was gone away to be sold down south. And that's what we're going to do, was pose by Dan Emmett, 1853. And this too became a big popular marching tune during the Civil War with both Confederate and Union armies. Steve, if you'll get to that verse, that's a little peculiar. If I was a legislator of these United States, I'd settle the fish question accordingly. I'd give the British all the bone and the Yankees all the meat, and stretch the boundary line to the other side of Jordan. Well, this was an instance of a news flash. In minstrel tunes, they sometimes included topical news items, and this one refers to the dispute that the Maine fishermen were noticing their cod population was dropping in their fishery, and they wanted the legislature, they wanted Congress to pass some kind of law that would keep the English and whoever from overfishing. So they got put into this minstrel tune, 1853.
A brand new song all through her service. Gambling high, we're gambling by, another on the earth like Jordan. Oh, Bob, the coat, boys, roll up the sleeve. Jordan, the hard road to travel. Bob, the coat, boys, roll up the sleeve. Jordan, the hard road to travel, I believe. I don't know, but I believe I'm right. All back to the horse buggy and balance save the money. Oh, up, roll up the sleeve. George is the hard road to travel. Oh, up you go, boys, roll up the sleeve. George is the hard road to travel.
how to play right. We're grateful that that one's over. We're gonna play one that you all have heard, and this one is the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Wow.
A great ditty, spirited, and it has an interesting story to it, which I've never heard of, until Steve came back from Texas. And he told me about Emily of Morgan's Point. Turns out that who was the Yellow Rose of Texas? Well, this was a enslaved person who became part of a imported population to Texas back in the days when Sam Houston was encouraging in-migration of U.S. people into this part of Mexico, which wasn't yet Texas. And there was a guy named Morgan who it was illegal to have slaves in Texas at that time, or bring slaves into Texas. So he converted everybody into indentured servants. And Emily West took Morgan's last name, as was the custom for indentured servants to do. And he put her in charge of making sure shipments would get loaded that were part of his business. And when, as the story goes, when Santa Anna's troops were in the area, he left and left Emily in charge. And Emily got word that Santa Anna was coming into this territory, and arranged for a message to get sent to Sam Houston that alerted him to this big presence of the Mexican army. And not only was she celebrated for that, but turns out that she was a diversion for Santa Anna, who decided to make camp and his spot, and Emily was a prisoner, but she was quite lovely evidently, and he got occupied with Emily. Meanwhile, Sam Houston got his army in position. So here's the tune that resulted from a story that was printed up in like 1836 about this whole event, and then got converted somehow into this tune, showing up later in the 1840s in the minstrel stage.
Oh, now I'm gonna find her.
Okay, this, next one, we're moving chronologically. This next one is after the Civil War. Hit tune in 1869. Frank's Minstrels used this as the walk around. This was the end number of the show, where all the performers kind of pranced around on stage. There were various phases of the performance. There was opening numbers, there was the kind of comedic question and answering that I described before with, the city slicker and the two end men. And then there were skits, and there were dances, and then finally there was this big finale. So we're going to do the big finale, not really our performance, but Shoe Fly. And Shoe Fly has an interesting history in that it became popular among soldiers in the Spanish-American War, when it was, they were beset by yellow fever carrying mosquitoes. So Shoe Fly became a appropriate tune. So here we go. Shoe Fly.
Well, I went down to Shoe Fly's house, Shoe Fly wasn't home. I ate up all the meat and bread, fed that dog to a bone. Shoe Fly, don't you bother me. Stay away from that Shoe Fly, they belong to company tea. Well, I feel that's what my mother said. Ain't no more lessons, I'll call that chicken dead. Shoe Fly, don't you bother me. Stay away from me, Shoe Fly, belong to company tea.
Somebody asked a question about all these different banjos up here, and the arrangements, and well, there are so many of them because I just didn't want to be retuning the banjo between numbers. So we've got a G banjo and a D banjo and an A banjo. In front here, Steve has brought this minstrel type banjo. I'm going to do a little quick demo of this. that it's got far fewer of these brackets that hold the head onto the rim. And the neck, really pretty wood neck. It does not have frets. So, yeah, you really have to guess. You have to be, you know, a positional player. And I'm maybe not such a great guesser. So you can see there's the opportunity to have those slurs
Yeah.
and have them sound really distinct on this fretless banjo as opposed to the ones that we play these days.
Is that the oldest one of what's up there?
Yes, this oldest type of banjo, yeah.
Oldest type.
Mm-hmm.
Not to give credit to the person that made that, a friend of mine named Tom Wolford in Goshen, Indiana, makes banjos, and he plays banjo in my band. And, if you were at one of the previous, things that we've done, we brought a gourd banjo once or twice, I think. And that was the original banjo, where it came over from Africa with the enslaved folks. They would make those out of a gourd and a stick and a string or a gut, something like that. There were no machines. And then this is kind of maybe the second generation was something like this. And maybe in the early 1800s, they started making them, with wood and some metal. And, my friend Todd that made this pretty much hammered out all the brass parts by hand and made the brackets and, the tailpiece. He made all that and tied together with leather. But, these are not catgut strings, no cat was injured.
The next one is one that, yeah, also quite possibly you've heard this. The Golden Slippers. And the Golden Slippers is played every year in Philadelphia on New Year's Day. In their procession, they've got this thing called the Mummers Parade. I don't know if you've heard about it. Yeah. But probably few people know that this was composed for the minstrel stage by James Bland, an African American, who was a prolific composer and banjoist, and performed in the minstrel stage. So this is one of his more famous tunes. It was a takeoff on a slave song, so-called slave song, that was sung by the Jubilee Singers. You know about the Jubilee Singers from the Fisk Jubilee Singers, who raised money for their college by going around on tour and singing songs that had been published as the slave songs by music collectors in Georgia Sea Lands. So that's kind of the legacy that we have from the Golden Slippers. Golden Usually we run out of time because I talk too much.
I think they want to fill out more cards.
All right, so we're gonna do a quick run through of Whistling Rufus. Whistling Rufus composed, actually, this is a composed tune by a professor of strings at the University of Michigan. Carrie Mills, professor, violinist, composed this tune for the minstrel stage in 1899.
Wow.
And it has survived, and we come to it because of the legacy of the Southern fiddlers that carried on this pop tune in their homemade music tradition. So here's Whistling Rufus.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard of the tune Red Wing, which is a famous pop tune, he wrote that one too. I guess I didn't pay you enough to be a professor.
All right. So we talked a little bit about the band show. How do popular tunes you're playing spread across the country? Good question. You know, on the one hand, minstrel shows were now we think of as kind of a cultural abomination in that they spread and reinforced this racist worldview. And did very effectively. And if you were going to devise a propaganda program that didn't announce itself as propaganda, you can learn a lot by noticing what the process was of inculcating generations of people with this kind of entertainment that reinforced over and over again these stereotypes. But we probably wouldn't be playing a bunch of our tunes, this old-time tradition, without the minstrel shows spreading these tunes widely. And the way that it spread it was they traveled. They traveled to all kinds of different places along the Erie Canal, in the Northeast, the port cities, Savannah, New Orleans. They were just big centers of this, and then you have these smaller outfits that would travel to rural communities. And one of our revered source fiddlers, Henry Reed, recalls as a kid hearing some of these tunes at what were called medicine shows. And these were shows that entertained with these kinds of tunes to very small towns in rural mountainous Appalachia, carrying forth these tunes. Let's see, yes, another question. Are we familiar with a tune called entitled Poppy Ran Away? This is one of the tunes that's really from the late 1700s that was written out. Definitely an African American tune that was played by enslaved people and was written down by European musical staff. Our sea shanty is part of the Civil War era folk song legacy. Does anybody want to weigh in on that? I'm surely not an expert on that one. Have any thoughts?
No.
There
was a naval aspect of the Civil War, so certainly anywhere you have sailors, you need ways of keeping time and getting your work done and enjoying yourself in the evenings, so I'm sure there were.
Maybe going back even to the Revolutionary War days, because you had ships going back and forth all the time. How long it got started?
pulling out of where oars as well, ships.
Okay, and then we have a public service announcement that there is tonight a program of Rhiannon Giddens.
Whoa.
And do you want to say something?
Yeah, I
more
just
about
looked
that?
it up, and it's called My Music with Brianna Giddens, and it's not about her. Apparently, she is now in, it's called, it's at 11 o'clock on PBS, and she's presenting another person, a woman, and I looked it up, and this is the third season. There are several shows in each season, so you can look up My Music with Rhiannon Giddens. She's an amazing evangelist and ethnomusicologist, has been awarded a MacArthur Genius Grant. She's quite a lady, quite adding to the traditions, going backwards and bringing them out.
The last one's supposed to be written on a $20 bill.
This will be second to last.
Sure, Helen, what's your question?
Oh, you can't read my handwriting. I should have been back. The question is, where do you get your sources? Or how do you know so much?
Okay, well, the sheet that Stephanie passed out has some resources on it, and that's one way. The internet is a wonderful resource, but we are really lucky in Michigan because there's a bunch of live music and jam sessions. And we've learned a lot of our tunes by ear, by sitting around with each other and playing. So Steve has a jam in South Bend weekly, and there's a weekly jam in Lansing where Mary is from. And Lee and I and others get together twice a month at the Thunderbird Ranch and Bar, that used to be our Kitty Ales. If you want to hear more of this music, you're welcome to come by and any of those places. Fiddler's Hearth in South Bend, People's Church in Lansing on Wednesdays.
All right, so for this gift of music, can we show some appreciation? So we do have extra copies of the sheet with additional resources if you'd like one or two. And also, I have Ollie interest forms. If you have friends, families, neighbors that might be interested in Ollie, this has the phone number, our website, et cetera, et cetera. As Tony said, the summer catalogs are coming out soon.